Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is part 1 of my new World of Warcraft guide for beginners. In this video I'm going to cover the first important steps and decisions that you have to make when you are creating your first character. This includes choosing a server, faction, race and a class. I will review every class and specialization in the game and explain their game mechanics and special features in general. If you have any feedback or questions regarding the topics in this video or World of Warcraft in general, feel free to leave a comment below. We have a lot to cover about classes and this video will be long. If you're interested in information about certain classes, you can use the timestamps in the description below. In order to create a character in World of Warcraft, you must first choose a server. Servers, or also called realms, are separate instances of the game world. This is your first important choice when creating a character, because it defines the ways you can interact with the other players. There are certain limitations when you connect with people from different realms. For example, you cannot send them a mail or trade items with them. There are 3 important factors for choosing a realm: preferred language, where are your friends playing, and the server population. Server population has impact on many aspects of the game, such as the number of active guilds, action house activity, and supply and demand for different items. The good news here is that these days many in-game events and activities are cross-realm, such as World PvP and Dungeons and Raids with few exceptions. I recommend choosing a server with higher population. There is one important thing here. If you see that the server's population status is high or even full, it doesn't mean that it is full with players from the faction you are going to play. I will talk about factions later in this video, but in general you can talk, group and be in the same guild only with characters of the same faction. That is why you have to know if there are enough players from your faction in the server you are about to choose. You can check the official forums of the servers and see if you can find updated information about the population, the community and the guild activity. There are also some websites that provide such information, but I'm not sure how accurate are they these days. Because of that, I have another strategy when I want to check a new server. I create a character and go to the major city of my faction. For Alliance this is Stormwind and for Horde it is Orgrimmar. Do that around 8 or 9 PM server time. If you see just a few people there, your faction is probably not highly populated. Also check the list of guilds. If you see only 30 or 40 guilds, that will confirm the problem. Otherwise you will see a few hundreds of guilds. Of course there is no guarantee that most of these guilds are active, but it is still a good indicator. Realms with status new players are usually well-populated servers, and they are just trying to attract more people to them. There are 2 types of servers: normal and roleplay. I recommend normal servers for most players. In roleplay servers, you create a backstory for your character and play and communicate with the other players according to that story, also by following certain rules that you have to read about first. Blizzard is providing certain game services related to character and server changes. You can buy a race change, faction change, and also a character transfer to another server. You can even change the name of your character. But these services cost real money and they are not cheap. That is why the decisions you are making while creating your characters are important, and I hope that this video will help you to make the right choices. Faction is an alliance of races that usually fight against those in the opposing faction. When creating a character, you must first choose a faction and then a race. As I mentioned before, players can talk, group and be in the same guild only with players from the same faction. The 2 factions fight against each other in certain PvP modes. In some cases, each faction has different storyline, quests and leveling zones. There are 2 factions in World of Warcraft: Alliance and Horde. The main races of the Alliance are Human, Night Elf, Dwarf, Gnome, Draenei and Worgen. Horde races are Orc, Undead, Tauren, Troll, Blood Elf and Goblin. Pandaren is the only race that can choose which faction to join when they finish their starting quest line. When you reach level 110 with a character, you will be able to start unlocking additional races called Allied races. Every race has so-called racial traits, which are passive or active abilities unique to the race. To see more information, select a race and hit the More Info section. These traits make minor difference, so usually they are not a basis for my choice. I recommend picking the race that looks visually cooler to you. There is something you have to take into account when choosing a race. Not all races have access to all classes. For example, if you want to play a Paladin, you can't choose Night Elf. And you can't play a Druid as human. Your choice of a class is probably the most important decision for your gameplay experience. That is why I always choose classes that I enjoy most. Each class has its advantages and disadvantages. If today one class has an advantage in a specific area, for example single target damage per second, the next game update that may change. In the next section I will share with you my experience and knowledge about the classes in World of Warcraft, which of them I would choose for my first character and why. Before we dive into different classes, let me quickly explain a few more things related to them. Each role defines your priority when playing in a group with other players. A tank is the player whose primary purpose is to absorb damage and prevent others in the group from being attacked. In ideal situation, the tank should be the only one taking damage and the only one that needs healing. Being a tank is not an easy role and requires a good knowledge of different dungeons, raids and boss mechanics. The survival of the tank is usually crucial for the group, which leads to the second very important role, the healer. The healer heals and protects the other members of the group. It is a very important and sometimes a challenging role. As a healer, you need to keep an eye on the health of the other players, and very often you will have to prioritize your healing targets. Damage dealer or DPS is the third role. There are two types of damage dealers: melee DPS, who are using close range weapons and abilities, and range DPS, who are dealing damage from a distance. Not all classes can be tanks or healers, but they all have at least one DPS specialization. Your characters can wear items that mitigate physical damage. There are four types: cloth, leather, mail and plate. They have different armor value, which defines the amount of physical damage the item can mitigate. Plate items have the highest armor value. There is also cosmetic difference between these types of items. Talents are special abilities that can be chosen when a certain character level is reached. They can be passive bonuses or active abilities. Each class and specialization has its own talent tree split in 7 tiers. Each tier unlocks at certain level and provides a choice of 3 talents. Only one of them can be chosen and may be changed later in certain conditions. Your choice of talents can have a significant impact on your character's performance and game style. And now let's talk about classes. Warrior is a plate-wearing melee class, which means that it uses close-range weapons and is more protected against physical attacks. Warriors can be tanks and DPS. They have a very good battlefield mobility, so they are able to quickly reach their targets with certain abilities. Warriors use rage as a primary resource for their abilities. It is generated by auto-attacking, by using different attacks or abilities, and can be also generated while taking damage. All that depends on the specialization. Rage can be spent on powerful attacks or defensive skills. Warriors can use a wide range of weapons, but each spec works best with certain types. This class has a choice of 3 specializations: Arms, Fury and Protection. Both Arms and Fury are DPS specs with a different playstyle. Fury warriors fight with 2 two-handed weapons, one in each hand. This is also called dual wield. Fury is known for its good consistent single target damage and powerful area of effect abilities. Area of effect is the ability that can hit multiple targets in certain range or area. Fury warriors have exceptional mobility and they can quickly move and switch from one target to another. They also have very good self-healing, which makes them good for leveling and fighting with more enemies at once. Something important I want to note here is that not all abilities are available when you create your character. Many of them become available when you reach a certain level. So when I say that the warrior class can do very strong area of effect damage, that means from a certain level of your character. Fury warrior has an easy to learn ability rotation and is suitable for beginners. Arms warriors use a single two-handed weapon. They also use Rage as a resource for their abilities. Arms is known to have efficient and flexible damaging abilities for different situations: single target, 2 target, 3 to 5 targets and more. These warriors are capable of doing good burst damage, which means to make a huge amount of damage in a short time. The rotation of this spec is also easy to earn in my opinion. Protection warriors are tanks. They use a one-handed weapon and a shield. Warrior tanks are very good in situations with high amount of physical damage and have very good mobility. They gain their rage not only with attacks, but also by taking damage. It is very easy to tank with Protection Warrior, which makes the class very good for beginners not only for DPS role, but also for tanking. The reason why it is not my first choice is that some of the other classes can do, let's say, more cooler things. And I also think that there are better choices for beginners. Paladins are very versatile plate-wearing class. They can perform all of the 3 roles: tank, heal and melee DPS. Such classes are also called hybrid classes. The DPS spec is Retribution. It uses a secondary resource called Holy Power, which is generated by the Paladin's weaker abilities and is used for the stronger ones. The Retribution Paladin usually fights with a slow two-handed weapon. The specialization provides both good single target and multi-target damage. Mobility, just like in the other 2 specs, is where the Retribution Paladin falls behind compared to other classes in the game. Protection is the tanking specialization, which is especially good at tanking multiple enemies at the same time. Like Protection Warriors, they use a one-handed weapon and a shield. They lack the mobility of the warriors, but have a good self-healing and defensive abilities, especially against predictable damage. Holy Paladins are healers, focused on using the light to heal allies and blessing targets with beacons to duplicate their healing. It is a very interesting mechanic. When you place a beacon on someone, whenever you heal another member of the group, that someone also receives a portion of the heals. At level 100, you can choose the Beacon of Fate talent, and you will be able to mark a second target as a beacon, just like you see here. This is the reason why Paladin healers are among the best tank healers in the game. In raids, where there are usually 2 tanks, you can put beacons on both of them and they will both receive a portion of your group heals. Holy Paladins are also capable of doing relatively good damage for a healer. There is also a talent you can choose to make a good healing for a short time by doing damage. This specialization also has many tools to help other members in the group to avoid damage and to keep them safe. Paladins can resurrect other fallen characters when out of combat. They can summon their own mount at level 20 and will automatically learn Apprentice Riding for free, which is the ability to ride mounts at increased speed. There is a good reason to choose the Paladin or any other hybrid class for your first character. You will be able to learn how to play and gain experience in all 3 roles. You can help your friends and guildmates with whatever role they currently need. You will be able to find groups for dungeons and even raids much quicker, because tanks and healers are always in high demand. By the way, if you find this video helpful so far, please give it a like. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. That will help me to make these guides even better. Hunters are pure DPS class and are special in many ways. While not being the only class that uses pets to fight, Hunters can have very unique synergy between the character and the pet. What is unique here is that they can tame different beasts and have them as pets that fight alongside them. One of the Hunter specializations, Beast Mastery, has the ability to also tame so-called exotic beasts. These are additional families of pets that have at least 2 special abilities, while others may have only 1. Hunters generate focus as a resource for their more powerful abilities. It generates slowly, but some specializations can also generate focus with certain abilities. How you spend focus and how often you miss to use it properly or on time defines how you use the potential of the class. Hunter has a choice of 3 DPS specializations. Beast Mastery utilizes the full potential of the pets, which do considerable portion of overall damage of the hunter. Hunters with this spec are using ranged weapons such as bows, guns and crossbows, and are known to be highly mobile because their abilities are instant and can be used while moving. The power of the pets in this specialization and the exceptional mobility makes it very good for leveling your character. The rotation is easy to learn and beginner friendly. Marksmanship is focused on the power of the ranged weapons and abilities of the hunter, and not so much on the pet. It also uses bows, crossbows or guns. Marksmanship hunters also have a good mobility, but not as good as beast mastery, because one of their main abilities has long cast time and you cannot move while using it. In these specializations you have the choice to use a pet or not. Focus management is a little more complicated and there is more to learn about the proper ability rotation. Survival is the melee DPS hunter spec, and it is a good choice when you want to completely change your game style and experience with your hunter. These hunters usually use a polearm as a weapon and have very strong single target damage and good burst area of effect damage. Some of the abilities are based on damage over time effects, which you should manage properly, and in such cases I define the rotations to be more complicated in order to use the full potential of the class. All hunter specializations have access to abilities called traps, used for freezing or swallowing the enemy. They also have abilities called aspects that provide certain effects. For example, aspect of the cheetah increases the movement speed for several seconds. One important hunter ability is feign death, with which hunter pretends to be dead and have a chance to live out of combat and survive a very dangerous situation. In many cases this can save you a lot of time and money. Hunters are the only class that can track all types of creatures on the minimap. Let's say that you're looking for beasts. Instead of trying to find them, you can adjust the minimap to track beasts only, and you will see all of them in a certain area range. Another cool ability is Eagle Eye, that lets you see far away for a minute. At level 45, all hunters can choose a talent Camouflage and gain stealth for 60 seconds. It also heals them while being hidden. The combination of a strong pet, powerful crowd control abilities, powerful range damage abilities, makes the hunter a perfect class for soloing quests. If you think that you will not be interested in tanking and healing, hunter is a very good choice for your first character. But how can you know that you won't be interested in tanking and healing before you try these roles? Yes, that's why I would choose a hybrid class for my first character. Warlocks are masters of shadow magic, demons and destructive spells. They are a pure range DPS class. Warlocks use mana as a primary and soul shards as a secondary resource for their abilities. Soul shards are generated by certain spells and used to unleash more powerful ones. Each Warlock specialization provides different playstyle. Affliction Warlocks are focused on damage over time spells. This makes them very strong against spread multiple enemies. Because these spells can be cast while moving, this specialization provides excellent mobility during fights. And as you already know from the Survival Hunter section, where damage over time effects are involved, I define the rotation as more difficult. It doesn't mean the Affliction Warlock is very hard to play, but it is more difficult to properly maintain such spells on several targets. This specialization has potential for very good sustained single target and multi-target damage. Demonology Warlocks are focused on summoning demons to fight their enemies. They are not that strong against spread multiple enemies, but are capable of doing very good single target damage and damage to stacked enemies. Destruction Warlocks are focused on using direct damage spells. The specialization is capable of performing very well in many situations like one target, two targets or multiple enemies. Most abilities have cast time, so this is the least mobile Warlock specialization on the battlefield. Warlocks can summon different demons. Each demon has different abilities and can be used in variety of situations. Each demon costs one soul shard to be summoned, and the Warlock can have only one demon active at a time. Warlocks can also summon stronger demons known as Guardians. These demons only stay active for a short period of time, but are stronger than the normal demons. Each specialization has access to a different guardian, which are providing different beneficial effects and doing damage to the enemy. Warlocks can create health stones that heal for a percentage of the character's maximum health. They can also create Soulstone, which they can put on themselves or give to other players. When the player with Soulstone dies, it can resurrect him even during combat. In groups it is usually used by the healer. Warlocks also have the unique ability to summon players from anywhere in the world. With the assistance of 2 other players, the Warlock can create a summoning portal and summon other players directly to the portal. This is a very nice ability for dungeon and raid groups, where if anyone leaves for some reason, the group can quickly find and summon a replacement. Rogues are leather-wearing melee DPS class, using strategy and stealth tactics to kill enemies quickly. They are masters of stealth and can stay hidden from all harm until the right time to strike. Rogues use 2 resources, energy and combo points. Energy is a quickly regenerating resource for the basic attacks. Combo points are generated by using abilities and can be spent on powerful finishing strikes. Stealth is an ability that makes rogues invisible to their enemies, so they can skip fights and avoid combat. Assassination rogues are focused on single target damage over time abilities with poison and bleed effects. This provides very strong consistent single target damage and strong sustained damage to few additional targets. The multiple target rotation is a little harder to master because of the damage over time effects you need to maintain on multiple enemies. The rotation also includes going in and out of stealth. Outlaw Rogue is a very interesting specialization that focuses on a combination of melee weapon, pistol abilities and the management of several personal buffs. The pistol is not an item that you put on your rogue as a separate item, he has it by default. In his main hand he uses a sword, mace, axe or a fist weapon. The secondary weapon can also be a dagger. The rotation of Outlaw Rogue does not count on stealth abilities. It provides very good multi-target damage when the enemies are not spread, and also very good defensive abilities. This is the easiest specialization and far more beginner friendly than the other 2. Subtlety is focused on using stealth and engaging enemies from behind. Its rotation involves often shifting in and out of stealth. In and out of stealth, these rogues generate combo points that they use to make powerful finishing strikes. Their greatest strength is centered on their ability to surprise their enemy, and if they are unable to defeat him, they can quickly vanish and go in stealth. With Pickpocket, rogues can take small and junk items and small amount of money from the mob's pockets. Picklock allows rogues to open locked chests, doors and lockboxes. They can also incapacitate a target that is not in combat for 1 minute. The rogue ability to go and move in permanent stealth and vanishing out of combat can be a huge advantage in many situations and help you stay alive. By the way guys, if you like this video so far, don't leave your likes in stealth mode. Hit the like button below. Dead Knight is so-called hero class. What is special here is that it starts from level 55 instead of level 1, with an individual starting zone and quest line. Dead Knights can either tank or deal damage from close range. They use runes as a primary and runic power as a secondary resource for their abilities. Whenever a rune is consumed, the Dead Knight gains 10 runic power. Runic power is used on the Dead Knight's most powerful abilities. Like warriors and paladins, he wears plate armor. Dead Knights have 3 specializations. Blood is the tanking one. Dead Knights tank without shield. They are using blood magic to shield themselves, mitigate damage and self-heal. Their tanking mechanics is centered around the strong self-healing ability, which must be used properly and at the right time. Blood Dead Knights also have access to powerful defensive abilities. This specialization is often used for leveling and soul questing. Frost provides some very powerful direct damage abilities. The specialization is known for its good area of effect burst damage and good survivability. Frost Dead Knights use 2 one-handed weapons. The rotation is very easy to learn and is more suitable for beginners than the next one. Unholy is focused on spreading infection and controlling undead minions to fight against their enemies. The specialization provides very strong single target and area of effect damage, but that comes at the price of a more complex rotation. They use damage over time effects and an important debuff that they apply on their enemy called Festering Wounds, which can be considered as a third resource. Unholy Death Knights have a permanent pet and a Gargoyle Guardian that they can summon for 30 seconds. Rune Forging is a unique Death Knight ability. It allows him to enchant his weapons with certain effects. Rune Forging is free of cost and worked after a few quests on the Death Knight's starting zone. One very important ability Death Knights have is resurrecting allies during combat. They also have the ability that allows them and other group members to walk on water. If I was a beginner, I wouldn't choose the Death Knight class for my first character. It is not a good idea for a beginner to start straight from level 55, because you will lose many good opportunities to learn and get used to the game mechanics, including questing, fight and grouping mechanics, playing in dungeons and many other aspects of the game. Shamans are considered a hybrid class. Although they can tank, Shamans can specialize in both melee and range DPS, and also healing. Unique Shaman tools are the totems. They can be used to gain wide variety of effects like healing allies and attacking enemies. The totem effect is active within a certain range and must be directly attacked in order to be destroyed. Elemental Shamans are powerful range damage dealers. They are capable of strong burst single target and area of effect damage. With some of their abilities, they generate a resource called Maelstrom that they spend on very powerful single target and area of effect abilities. I find this specialization easy to learn, very fun to play and also very flexible. Elemental Shaman can summon Fire Elemental for 30 seconds. That will attack his enemies and help him generate more Maelstrom. Enhancement Shamans are melee damage dealers, fighting opponents with elementally empowered weapons. They use two one-handed weapons and generate Maelstrom with their auto attacks and some of their abilities. The Maelstrom is then spent on powerful single target and multi-target strikes. Enhancement Shamans are capable of doing strong sustained single target damage. Restoration is the healing Shaman specialization. It is very flexible because it has many strong single target and multi-target healing abilities. Restoration healing is exceptionally strong when the allies are stuck together. Restoration provides very interesting talent choices that gives access to different playstyles. Another interesting fact for this specialization is that it has the ability to interrupt enemy spellcasting. This is unique among all healers and is important in some group and PvP activities. Shamans also have other interesting abilities. All characters in the game have a spell called Hearthstone. It teleports the player to a location that he has chosen as a home location. That may be a place in a leveling zone or a major city. That spell has a long cooldown. Shamans have access to a second spell with the same effect, Astral Recall. Sometimes this can save the player a lot of time. All Shamans have access to a powerful spell called Heroism or Bloodlust, which significantly increase everyone's damage and healing in the group for a certain period of time. Shamans can incapacitate some of their enemies for 1 minute by transforming them into a frog. That way the enemies can't attack or cast spells. Water walking can make the shaman or a friendly target to be able to walk across water for 10 minutes. This is very useful when the player needs to quickly reach a place that is separated by a deep water. Shamans can resurrect dead allies if they're out of combat. And at last but not least, one of the shaman's very interesting abilities is that he can resurrect himself once per 30 minutes, which is very valuable ability when fighting strong opponents or playing in complicated group activities. Now I hope you understand why I find warrior a little boring class compared to some of the others. Mages are another pure range DPS class that use arcane, fire or frost spells to deal damage. This class is capable of doing great single target and area of effect damage and also has exceptional crowd control and utility abilities. Mages use mana as a resource and have 3 specializations offering completely different and fun to play style. Arcane mages unsurprisingly use arcane spells to fight their enemies. They have a secondary resource called Arcane Charge that they generate mainly with one of their abilities. Those charges increase the damage of some of the spells, including the one that is used to generate them. What is special about Arcane Mages is that the rotation has two phases: Burn and Conserve. During the Burn phase, Arcane Mages spend all their mana on damaging spells with the idea to do as much burst damage as possible till it is depleted. Then they are able to use a spell called Evocation to fill the mana and go into Conserve phase. During the Conserve phase, the mage will continue to do damage while trying to save most of his mana till Evocation is ready to be used again. Then he goes in Burn phase again, and that repeats till the enemy is down. This specialization can do impressive single target and area of effect damage. It may seem a little more complicated at first, but once you master it, it will provide exceptional results. All mages, no matter of the specialization, have the ability to become invisible for 20 seconds. Arcane Mages have an upgraded version which is called Greater Invisibility, that also provides 60% reduced damage taken. This can save the mage in many dangerous situations. Fire Specialization provides very strong burst damage, mainly on stacked enemies. The rotation is not very simple and requires some planning. You will need to learn how to execute the right combination of spells that will give you a large chain of critical strikes. Fire Mages have better mobility because they have a spell that can be cast while moving and others that are instant. Frost Mages are specialists in crowd control and snaring enemies with various chilling spells. That makes them the perfect specialization for leveling your character and solo questing. This spec provides very strong single target and area of effect damage. As a Frost Mage, you can summon Water Elemental that will fight against your enemies and also has the ability to immobilize them. In my opinion, the rotation is easier than the Arcane or Fire Mages. But there are still some tricks that must be learned for maximum results. There are also interesting talent choices that can change the game style. Mages have some very interesting abilities that must be mentioned here. All mages can blink, which teleports them to a short distance. That may help them to avoid dangerous situations. Similar to shamans, mages can transform some of their enemies into a sheep, which incapacitates them for 1 minute. As I mentioned earlier, they can become invisible for 20 seconds. They can also steal buffs from their enemies, and again, just like shamans, they have a spell that increases the group damage and healing for 40 seconds. But there is much more. Mages are able to make food and water needed for health and mana refill. They have a spell that decreases their falling speed, so they can jump from a high mountain and stay alive when they reach the ground. Mages can also teleport themselves to a large number of cities around the world, which saves a huge amount of time for travel. In addition, they can also create portals to these locations that party members can use. Mage is an amazing class and one of my favorite. If you eventually decide to start with a pure DPS class, you won't be disappointed from this one. If you're also not disappointed with this video so far, hit that like button below. Priest is the only class in the game with 2 healing specializations, providing completely different healing style. There is also one DPS specialization. Discipline is very interesting and unique healing spec. Its main healing comes from doing damage to the enemies and also absorbs the incoming damage with shields. Discipline priests can do significant damage and produce very strong area of effect burst healing, but that comes in one important condition. The priest must know when to expect high income damage and when to use his cooldowns. This specialization is not easy to master. It is maybe one of the most complicated healer specs in the game. In order to know when to expect high income damage, the player needs to know the enemy and their damaging patterns very well, especially in some dungeons and most raids. But once you learn how to play this specialization, it will provide you with very good results and very fun playstyle. Holy Priest focuses on the traditional healing style, with direct healing and kill over time effects. It is an easy to learn and easy to play specialization. It is good for both single target and multi-target healing. Holy Priests have good abilities for almost any kind of incoming damage and dangerous situations. Overall, Holy Priest is an exceptional healer, especially in large groups like raids. Shadow Priests are very capable damage dealers that stay in a shadow form, which increases their damage. It is one of the most complicated DPS specs in the game and requires a lot of training. Shadow Priests generate insanity with most of their damage spells. Once they gain enough insanity, they go in void form for a certain period of time. In that form, they have certain benefits and a new powerful ability. The challenge here is to stay in this form as much as possible, which depends on using the right combination of spells on time. Meanwhile, there are two damage over time spells that you have to maintain active on your enemies, one of them providing self-healing. It is a strong specialization, especially in spread enemy scenarios, but very challenging and not the best option for beginners. Priests have one very important ability that is available for all specializations: Mass Dispel. It can remove all harmful effects from each friendly player and one beneficial spell from each enemy target in a certain area. Psychic Scream causes all nearby enemies to flee in fear from the priest. It is available to Discipline and Shadow Priests. All priests can resurrect other players when out of combat. Levitate is an interesting spell, which is a kind of combination of Shaman's Water Walking and Snowfall of the Mage. Monks are a hybrid class, able to perform each of the three group roles: tank, healer and melee damage. Energy is the primary resource of the Brewmaster and Windwalker monks, while Mistweavers use mana instead. Brewmaster is the tanking specialization. It provides unique tanking mechanics, which does not rely so much on avoiding damage through dodging or parrying effects. Brewmaster monks deal with the incoming damage with staggering. Stagger causes only a portion of the damage to be done to the monk instantly. The rest of the damage is done over 10 seconds, and the monk is even capable of removing a part of that delayed damage. That makes monks easier to be healed as tanks and better at tanking instant strong hits. At the same time, they have great mobility, good damage reduction abilities and self-healing, mainly through spheres that they have a chance to summon when they take damage. Windwalker monks are melee damage dealers, focus on a range of martial arts abilities. This specialization provides easy rotation, strong area of effect damage and great mobility. In addition to energy that is generated passively, Windwalker monks use Chi as a secondary resource, which is generated with certain spells and used for other powerful ones. Mistweaver is the monk healing specialization. It is very fun to play, very powerful, and at the same time, it is one of the most beginner-friendly healing specializations in the game, at least in my opinion. Mistweaver monks are among the strongest single-target healers, and also have very powerful multi-target and area of effect healing spells. They have exceptional mobility because they can cast most of their spells while moving. Mistweaver spec also have access to great crowd control abilities that can knock down or incapacitate enemies. And in addition to all that, these monks have abilities to help them to empower their own healing by doing damage. The talent tree provides interesting choices that can lead to a different healing style. All monks have access to an interesting ability called Transcendence. It allows you to leave a copy of your character at certain location for 15 minutes, and then when you cast Transcendence Transfer, you will be instantly moved back to that location. That is very useful if there is a location that you know that you will have to return to. All monks have the Paralysis spell that incapacitates enemy for 1 minute. All monks can resurrect other players when out of combat. Monk is a different and very fun to play class. I highly recommend it for beginners. But wait to see another very good option. There is a class that can go in stealth just like rogues, perform all the 3 roles like paladins and monks, resurrect allies during combat like the Death Knight, and be a melee and ranged DPS like shamans. No, it's not the Demon Hunter. Demon Hunters are the newest class in the game. They are special because of the fact that, like Death Knights, they have a different starting zone experience, special quest line, and they start from a higher level, in this case 98. In order to create a Demon Hunter, you need to have at least one 70 level character on the same server. All these specialties are nice, but they don't make Demon Hunter a good option for beginners. That is why I won't go into too much details here. Demon Hunters have two specializations. Havoc is melee DPS Demon Hunter. It uses Fury as a resource for some of its powerful abilities. It may be generated with auto attacks or with one of the basic abilities. The proper management of that resource is crucial for damage output. It is spent mainly on three abilities: one powerful single target, one powerful multi-target, and one multi-target ability with moderate damage. Havoc Demon Hunters have very good mobility on the battlefield. Vengeance is the tanking specialization. The mechanics include a mix of damage reduction, great self-healing and great mobility. Vengeance Demon Hunters use a resource called Pain that can be generated by certain abilities. That resource is used for other important abilities. Self-healing comes mainly from a unique mechanic called Soul Fragments. When the Demon Hunter kills a target, there is a chance Soul Fragment to be created. These fragments can be consumed by walking over them or using a certain ability. There are also lesser Soul Fragments that are generated with damaging abilities, and they can be consumed the same way as Soul Fragments. Only the Demon Hunter can see and use those fragments. Demon Hunters can double jump and reduce their falling speed. They have an ability that allows them to see enemies and treasures through physical barriers, as well as stealthed and invisible enemies. They can incapacitate some of their enemies for 1 minute. Demon Hunter is a good and powerful class that you should definitely try at some point, but not too soon. I intentionally left the Druid class last in the list, because it is often my first choice when I start playing on a new server. I'll explain why. Druid is the only class that has 4 specializations, covering all types of roles: tank, healer, melee damage and range damage. This will give you the opportunity to gain experience in all roles, and in future, if you get bored by one of them, you have plenty of other specializations. To have the opportunity to taste both melee and range damage role is a very nice feature. In outdoor questing, the difference is not that noticeable and important, but as you level your character and start playing in high-level group activities, especially in endgame raids, you will see the difference in the challenge these two types of DPS provide. Druids are the only real shapeshifter class in the game. Shamans, for example, can shapeshift into wolves and run faster, but that is nothing compared to the druids. Druids can shapeshift into a powerful bear. They tank in that form. They can shapeshift into big wildcats, in which form they perform their role as a melee damage dealers. In the form of a moonkin, they are powerful range damage dealers. Something very special about druids is that as soon as they get access to cat form at level 8 and use it, they gain 30% increased movement speed, which saves you a huge amount of time for traveling. At level 18, druids gain access to a travel form that lets them shift into another animal and gain 40% increased speed. In cat form, druids can go into permanent stealth just like rogues. That lets them to avoid many danger situations, including attacks from other players from the opposing faction. All shape-shifting forms make the druid immune to polymorph spells. Remember that mage spell that transforms enemies into sheep? Well, if a mage tries that on your bear, he will be disappointed. Just like all classes that have healing specialization, druids can also resurrect players out of combat. But just like Death Knights, they also have the ability to do that even during combat. Druids can put some types of enemies into sleep and incapacitate them for 40 seconds. Let me now quickly say a few words about the specializations. Balance is the range damage dealing specialization. Balanced druids usually fight in moonkin form that increases their armor and damage output. They use a resource called astral power that they generate with certain spells and spend it on others. Balance provides very good single target and multi-target damage and great mobility, because most of the spells can be used while moving. Balanced druids have 2 damage over time spells that they have to maintain on their targets. In multiple enemy situations that may be more difficult and requires more learning and experience. In single target situations the rotation is very easy and powerful. Feral is the melee damage specialization, performed in cat form. In some aspects they are very similar to rogues. They use energy as a primary resource for their attacks, and build combo points that they can spend on powerful finishing strikes. It definitely doesn't have one of the easiest rotations, because it involves managing those combo points and also damage over time effects on the target. But when you get used to it, this specialization provides potential for very good single target and area of effect damage, especially at higher levels. The Druid tanking specialization is called Guardian. Druids tank in bear form, and similar to protection warriors, they use rage as a resource. It is generated in many ways: by auto attacks, taking damage, and from using certain abilities. Druid tanks deal with the incoming damage with damage mitigating abilities, large health pool, increased armor, and self-healing. Restoration is the Druid healing specialization. It is focused on healing with healing over time effects. The power of these healers is that they are able to efficiently heal heavy spread allies, and even while moving. They are also great tank healers because they can put numerous heal over time spells on him. Restoration druids are also very good group healers and have nice cooldown abilities that bring strong burst healing when it is needed. One important thing I have to mention here is that at level 45, all druids can choose a talent that gives them access to certain abilities from the other 3 specializations, and also one beneficial effect. So for example, restoration druids can choose the talent Balance Affinity, which will increase the range of their abilities, gives access to Moonkin form, and 2 of the strong abilities of the Balance specialization. That way, druid healers are able to do significant damage when healing is not needed. In my opinion, the game mechanics of the restoration druids is very powerful, easy to learn and beginner friendly. If your World of Warcraft account is upgraded to the newest expansion, you can use the feature Class Trial and try all available classes. These trial characters are playable for 3 hours with some limitations. So these are the basics of choosing a server and creating your first character. In the next video I'm going to be talking about the interface of the game, leveling, professions and the auction house. I hope this guide was helpful to you. If it was, let me know by hitting the like button. Also leave a comment below if you want to see specific topics within this series of guides. Your feedback can be very helpful. I hope that you will also subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, so we can see each other again in the next part of this guide. Thanks for watching and good luck with your new character.